bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my BookExpo book haul for you guys, and oh my goodness, I have so many great things to share with you. I'm so excited. This was a really spectacular year at BookExpo. It was kind of weird because there were less titles than normal that I'm usually like gunning for, but I'm really pleased with everything that I did get, and I was able to go to a couple of publisher events where they discussed some books that hadn't previously been on my radar, but that I am now like super excited to read. So I'm just gonna get into it because there's quite a bit to cover, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the most exciting book that I got that I was willing to do anything for, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I have literally been dying for this book, and if you watch my vlog, which should be up shortly, it was basically the saga to get The Starless Sea because getting it during BookExpo was near impossible, but I thankfully was able to snag a copy during BookCon, and I got to meet Erin, and she is amazing, and I just am so thrilled and so excited to read this one. The Night Circus is like one of my favorite books in the entire world, so this was such a highly anticipated release for me, and like to have it and to have Erin's signature in it is like unreal. Like I can't even believe it. I've talked about this book in numerous videos, but in case you do not yet know the synopsis, this follows a guy named Zachary who is a grad student, and he is working in like the library, and while he's there he finds this book within the stacks that has his own life recorded in it. So he's super like intrigued and wants to find out how his life could possibly be written in this book that he found. So he goes in search of a bunch of clues, and he ends up finding like a bee and a key and I think a sword, and then it leads him to a masquerade party in New York City, and there's all of this like underground secret society stuff going on, and it just sounds incredible. And if it is anything like the Night Circus, I know it is going to be like a magical, life-changing experience, and oh man, I'm ready. Then I was really excited because I got to meet Ashley Elston finally. As you guys know, I am obsessed with This Is Our Story and The Lying Woods. I just think that her books are so brilliantly written, and she has a new book coming out that is actually a straight contemporary novel, and it is 10 Blind Dates, and I'm so excited to read this one. It actually already got optioned to be made into a Netflix film, and it's going to be produced by the producer of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. So that's really exciting. But honestly, I was just so excited to meet Ashley. I saw she posted like a photo of the signage at Disney, and I responded to her message on Instagram stories, and I was like, I'm so excited. And then she wrote back, "Are you here?" And I was like, yes, I've been like hovering by the Disney booth for, I don't know, an hour and a half to try to get this. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so excited to meet you." And then she actually like peeked out into the line early to wave to me because she knew what spot in line I was, and that was like super exciting. And then I had to like try to pretend that I was being totally normal and totally cool when I was meeting her, but inside I was basically dying because she is just the most brilliant writer. I think that all of her stories are incredibly well done. This one follows a girl who ends up getting broken up with like right during the holiday season, and she's really heartbroken, and she's going to spend time with family, and her family wants to help and cheer her up, so they set her up on a series of 10 blind dates, and hopefully she's going to end up meeting the one in there. But I mean, I love the holiday season first of all, so that already got me. And also just, I know that if it's anything like Ashley's other books, I'm gonna be completely blown away. And I'm also super excited about the adaptation. I honestly think that this is probably gonna be the first BookExpo book that I end up picking up once this weekend is over and my mind like slightly recharges, because I just can't wait. You know what? I should tell you when these come out. So this book actually comes out in October, and The Starless Sea, which I talked about before, that comes out in November. Then I went to a Simon Teen breakfast, and it was such a great experience, and they did like this really fun kind of speed dating thing where they had a whole bunch of authors, and they each spent 8 minutes at our table, and they were able to talk to us, and we could ask them any questions that we wanted. It was really awesome. So one of the most exciting things that came in our swag bag, in my opinion, is a finished copy of Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is one of my favorite fantasy books that I read this year. It was so spectacular. It felt very much like old school fantasy, and it was just so magical and so well told. And the world building in here, like, blew me away. I was amazed at how much I was in love with this book while I was reading it. I buddy read it with Alexa from Alexa Loves Books and Mel from Mel to the Any, and all three of us, like, every day would be voraciously texting, like, did you read today's chapters yet? Like, it was so good. And Silas is my favorite character in the world. But just so you know, this takes place in a magical library, and all of the books, like all of the grimoires, have these magical qualities to them. And we're following a girl named Elizabeth who actually was an orphan, but she grew up in one of these libraries, and her entire life she's been told that sorcerers are like horrible people, but something happens and then she ends up having to team up with a sorcerer named Nathaniel, and her views kind of start to change. But Silas is the best character ever. Silas is a demon that is around because sorcerers get their power from demons by offering like part of their life, but Silas has been with Nathaniel since he was a young boy, and they have such an interesting relationship, and oh my gosh, I was just dying when I read this. It was so good. Even more exciting, after the breakfast I ended up running into Margaret, and she's like the sweetest person in the world, and I was like, can I be super annoying and please ask you to like sign and personalize my copy, because I just really love this book so much. And she was kind enough to do so thank you so much, Margaret. But if you have not yet read this, I highly recommend doing so. And if you have read An Enchantment of Ravens and you didn't love that book, I highly recommend reading this one because it is completely different. Like, I would absolutely make it a priority to read this book this year. Then I also got a copy of Ghosts of the Shadow Market, and wow, that was really exciting. I've never met Cassandra Clare before, and I was having an out-of-body experience. Sitting across the breakfast table from Cassandra Clare, I was like, I can't say anything because I'm just so clammed up that I'm in the presence of such a like prolific author. It was mind-blowing to me, and I still can't believe it. I'm still like, did that really happen? Like, was that a dream? But I don't know. So Ghosts of the Shadow Market, this is actually a collection of short stories, and they're all focused on Jem Carstairs, my fave character. And there's actually 2 new short stories in here because the rest of them were previously published online, but there are 2 stories that take place after Queen of Air and Darkness that were not previously released because they were a little bit spoilery for the ending of the Dark Artifices series, and I cannot wait to get up to those. I'm actually about halfway through this book at the moment, and I'm really loving it. I also got a sampler of Chain of Gold, and I cannot wait for this book. I'm really excited because the characters that it's going to be following, I think it's going to end up being potentially one of my favorite series. My favorite of her series so far is The Infernal Devices, but we're gonna get some James Herondale in here and Anna Lightwood, and I'm here for it. Chain of Gold actually got pushed back because Cassandra Clare needs to have a medical procedure done. It's something that like really can't wait. So the book actually got pushed back to March of 2020, which obviously she should take care of her health, but I'm glad that I will have this little sampler to hold me over until then. And if you subscribe to her newsletter, she's also been releasing scenes from it like pretty often, so it's getting me like more and more hyped every time that a newsletter from her shows up in my inbox. I also got the sampler of Capturing, my bookmark fell out. I also got the sampler of Capturing the Devil by Carrie Maniscalco. I'm really looking forward to reading the 4th and final book in the series. I normally would never wait in line to get a sampler because I honestly just don't think that it's worth it, but Carrie is just such a nice person, and I feel like I've gone to see her at every single BEA, and every time that she's had a book event in New York, I've always been there. So I really just like wanted to see her and to have this little tidbit to hold me over until the full book comes out, but it was really just very nice to see her. And this one comes out on September 10th. Then I made it a priority to pick up this adorable graphic novel, which is Mooncakes. It's by Wendy Zhu and Suzanne Walker, and this follows a girl who is a teenage witch and she works at her grandmother's bookshop. Here for it already. And one night she ends up seeing this like mysterious white wolf, and she follows it into the woods, and then she discovers that it's actually like her childhood crush who is a werewolf, and then they're kind of like pursued by these dark forces. And just judging by the cover, it looks like there's going to be some baking in there, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. It just looks so cute. And this one comes out in October of 2019, which that's kind of the perfect time for a witch book. Then I got Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. This is their newest novel. This one is also coming out toward the end of October. And this follows a girl named Tate, and she, like, long ago fell super in love with this guy Sam, and they had this like whirlwind romance, and they went away on vacation together, and she fell like very deeply in love with him. And then I don't know what happened, but something happened where it ended and she was just left completely heartbroken, but she still constantly thinks about her first love. And now 14 years later, she is like an up and coming actress, and she happens to run into her old flame. I believe sparks will fly. This is a second chance romance. It just sounds like it's gonna be really cute. I have yet to read a Christina Lauren book that I don't love. I think that they're all like, they're just so quick and they're so happy and so just like enjoyable. So I'm quite excited to read this one. Then I have A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the second book and the concluding book to the A Curse So Dark and Lonely duology. I really enjoyed the first book. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it's partially set in this like really beautiful fantasy world, and then partially set in Washington, D.C. in present day. Our main character, Harper, actually has cerebral palsy, so it was a really great story and a really great way to see how somebody that has a physical ailment can still be very strong and impactful in this like fantasy world of Emberfall. And the ending of the first book really left me wanting more, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it's going to conclude. And Gray was one of my favorite characters, and I believe that Gray is one of the main characters in this book. I think it's told from his perspective and from a new character's perspective. I don't think that we get Ren and Harper's perspective. I think the first book was like their book, but they obviously will be in here as well. So I'm pretty excited. And this one comes out in January of 2020. Then actually the first book that I got once I got on the floor at Book Expo was Winterwood by Shea Earnshaw. I really loved her first book, The Wicked Deep. I think that the way that she writes atmosphere is just so like delicious, and I just wanted to go and visit that adorable seaside town. But this book takes place in a spooky forest, which is like Kristen candy. So I had this as like a top priority of a book that I really wanted to get during the convention, and I'm so glad that I was able to get a copy. Full disclosure, it dropped at noon on Wednesday, and that is when everybody was running to get Ninth House tickets by Leigh Bardugo. I knew that that would be a bloodbath, and I was not trying to get involved in that, and I was really excited about Winterwood, so I beelined for the Simon booth while everyone was fighting it out at Macmillan, and I'm really happy with my choice. So it follows a girl named Nora who comes from a long line of witches who are like connected to these mysterious magical woods, and this connection kind of leads her to this guy Oliver, who actually went missing within the woods during the worst snowstorm ever, so he really should not be alive, but yet here he is. And he also has no memory of what happened during the time that he was missing within the woods. And then as Nora like gets closer to him, she always feels a very uneasy shift within the woods whenever Oliver is near there, and she kind of has to confront what happened while he was there, what he maybe did in the forest, and how he made it out alive. And this one comes out in November. Then I got super lucky because in one of my many attempts to get the Starless Sea, I happened upon the Penguin booth, and they just so happened to be doing a drop for The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This is one of the books that I actually talked about as one of the books that I was really highly anticipating and hoping that I would be able to get a copy of at Book Expo. It's Renee Ahdieh's new book, and it takes place in New Orleans, and there are vampires, and I'm just so ready for vampires to be back in my fiction. I miss them dearly. So our main character Celine is actually from Paris, and she flees to New Orleans in 1872, and she was a dressmaker in Paris, which like sounds incredible. She gets taken in by this convent. She just completely falls in love with the city of New Orleans, and she just gets so like enraptured in the culture and just the vibrancy of the city. But then she kind of discovers that there's maybe this like super dark underground, and there are people that are getting murdered and going missing, and it could potentially be connected to this very handsome, probably vampire that she ends up crossing paths with. So basically there is a serial killer on the loose, and suddenly Celine is in his sights, and it just sounds like it's going to be absolutely amazing. And this book comes out in October. Next, I have another contemporary that I'm really excited about, and that is A Match Made in Mende by Nandini Simi Bajpai. And this book follows a girl named Simi who comes from a long line of Indian matchmakers, and she does not want to follow in her family's footsteps, but she actually introduces like her cousin or something to this guy, and they end up being a really great match. So everybody in her family is like, oh my god, she has the gift, she's gonna be the next matchmaker, but she's like not into it. So she's really like an artist and she kind of wants to do her own thing, but she realizes that this might be the perfect thing to kind of elevate her social status. So her and one of her best friends end up developing a matchmaking service, and of course they do it using an app. Through the app, she ends up matching like the star of the soccer team with this very much wallflower girl, and it kind of turns the social hierarchy of her school upside down. And the thing that really drew me into this one is that it really examines like what happens when you go outside of your comfort zone and outside of the normal clique that you hang out with, because you could have strong connections with people, with unlikely people, but it all depends on like taking that chance to find them. And it really sounds like something that is kind of unexplored in YA at this point, especially like within your own hometown, because you got so comfortable with your own friends, but there's just so much more out there. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. And this one comes out in September. Then I got The Map from Here to There by Emery Lord. This is the second book that comes after The Start of Me and You. Really excited that Emery Lord is going to be revisiting these characters. I know so many of my best friends love that book of hers like more than anything in the world. And I previously hadn't read it, so right the day before Alexa and I were going to get this book, I actually was like, I want to start reading the first one because I want to at least be like a little bit ready for it, because I know that we're gonna try to get it, and I won't get it if I'm not like very into it so that someone else can get it. But I ended up reading like half of it in one sitting and I am obsessed. I feel like I've been talking nonstop about it and I have so many feelings about the main characters. You'll hear about that in my wrap up. So I have not yet read the synopsis to The Map from Here to There because I obviously don't want to be spoiled on what happened in the first book, especially since I am so close to finishing it. But I am just really looking forward to reading it, and I also really love the cover, and they've redesigned the cover of the first book too that they're going to be releasing in paperback, and I know that I'm going to want matching copies of them. Emery Lord is one of my favorite contemporary authors, and I will read anything that she writes. The Start of Me and You happened to be the only thing that I hadn't read yet, and it's because so many people kept telling me like that it would be my favorite and how much I would love it, so I just kind of kept putting it off, and now I'm like kicking myself for doing that. But oh man, I want more Paige in my life. So this one's actually coming out in January. Then another one that I got really lucky that I just happened to stumble upon while I was walking the floor is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. I was obsessed with The Perks of Being a Wallflower when I was a teenager. I read that book in high school like multiple times and always in one sitting, and I loved it every single time. Like I felt like it was like a life-changing book. The fact that Stephen is finally publishing another book, I'm so excited, but it's a very big departure from that first book. This is actually an adult novel, and it's kind of more of like a horror book or like a thriller book than Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is definitely not those things. So it follows a girl named Kate who actually flees an abusive relationship, and she brings her son along with her, and they try to start anew in this small Pennsylvania town that has like a very tight-knit community. And while they're there, her son Christopher actually ends up disappearing for 6 entire days, and it's absolutely horrible and nobody has any idea what happened to him. But then he ends up resurfacing and he's okay physically. And he ends up returning with this voice in his head that tells him that he needs to build a treehouse within the woods before Christmas, otherwise his mother and everyone in the town will never be the same again. And it's a voice that only he can hear. And it says that they soon find themselves in a giant battle between good and evil, and their small town is the battleground. So I'm extremely intrigued by that premise, and I'm just really excited to get more of Stephen Chbosky's writing. And this one comes out in October. Then we went to a novel brunch, which was absolutely lovely, and I got a copy of The Revolution of Bertie Randolph. This is by Brandy Colbert, and Brandy was actually there, so we got to hear her talk about her book, which is always my favorite thing because I feel like no one explains a book better than the person who wrote it. They're always just so good about getting you to like be really excited for it too. So this book actually follows a girl named Bertie who helps out working in her mother's hair salon. They live in Chicago. She is like kind of expected to be the perfect kid and like, you know, become a doctor or a lawyer, get really good grades. And then she ends up meeting this guy and there's a little romance forming, and it's a guy that her family definitely wouldn't approve of necessarily, but it's not like she's dating this like awful rebellious guy that it would be like a damaging kind of relationship. It's just not what her parents would expect of her. And it sounds like a really great coming of age novel. And there are family secrets that tend to rise. She has an aunt that comes to live with them, and there's lots of tension going on in her household. And it just sounds like it's going to be a really incredible read. And this one comes out in August. Then I also went to a Fierce Reads event, and this was such a great event because they had all of the publicists sit with us and like constantly switch tables. So we got to hear about all of these books that hadn't previously been on my radar, but now I'm really excited to read a lot of them. There were also some keynote speakers, which was really awesome. And Marie Lu was there. So she talked to us for a little while, which was like so great because I love Warcross to pieces. But what she was there to talk about is Rebel, which is her new book set in the same world as Legend. And I have to say, I have not yet read the Legend series. This is also a sampler, it's not the full thing. One thing I was excited to hear is that Rebel is actually a standalone novel, so you don't have to read the Legend trilogy in order to read Rebel. Apparently she does a lot of recap within it so that you will not be lost and you will have this like separate standalone story where you will get a satisfying ending with the characters, because from what she said, it sounds like the characters didn't have a very satisfying or didn't have a very happy ending in the Legend trilogy, so we'll get something better here. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's also set within the same world as Warcross, and I love Warcross. So yeah, it just sounds really cool. And also this is definitely my favorite cover of any of the books in the Legend series so far. And then also really cool, which we found out, is that we have like obviously the normal text here, but then if we go to the next chapter, it's in purple, which I think is amazing. I'm really excited to read this one. And Rebel comes out in October. Then also at the Simon Breakfast, I got a copy of Slay by Brittany Morris, which I am really excited to read because this book deals with virtual reality, which is something that is like super awesome and definitely very close to home. This follows a young girl who actually developed a virtual reality game that is based on Wakanda from the Marvel movies, from Black Panther. It is all about her, and she's obviously like addicted to the game too since she developed it, but literally no one in her life knows that she's the one that developed it. And then somebody ends up getting murdered because of a dispute over the game Slay, which she created, and the game gets labeled as racist, and she has to battle like all of these online trolls and figure out a way to preserve the game and preserve her secret identity. She definitely doesn't want people to know that she's the one that is in charge of this game, and it just sounds like it's going to be really cool. And also, females face so much criticism in the world of like video games and virtual reality, and then it has the added element that she is a Black woman too, so I'm sure that it's going to be like a very hard-hitting novel. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Brittany actually was talking a little bit about video games, and she mentioned Undertale, which is one of Andrew's favorite games, so I feel like she has good taste. Slay is coming out in September, so you won't have to wait too long to read this one. Next, I have Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland, and this was actually one of the books that I hadn't previously heard about, but now I'm super intrigued about. And it follows a girl named Kamai who is a soul walker, and her mother is also a soul walker. They have the ability to journey into other people's souls while they're sleeping, and every time that Kamai journeys, she ends up seeing this black door, and her mother constantly tells her like, do not do anything with that door, just ignore that door, just leave it alone, don't touch it. So Kamai ends up touching the door, and it's kind of like warm and beating as if it has a pulse, and then of course she just completely defies everything her mother said and she opens the door, because why wouldn't she open the door? And supposedly there is court intrigue, and the main character is also asexual, and I am so intrigued. I cannot wait to read this. And this one comes out in October. Then I also got a little sampler of Pumpkinhead by Rainbow Rowell. I'm obviously like dying to read this full thing. This is actually coming out in August, and I love Rainbow Rowell. I will read everything that Rainbow Rowell writes, and I am particularly excited for this one because it takes place in a pumpkin patch, and it's following our two main characters who I believe are like best friends, and it's their last summer before they're heading off to college, and there's a lot of pie, and I'm sold. They also, along with this little sampler, gave us a little print from the comic. It's like a panel, and it says, "I can't believe it's our last night at the patch," and it's just so autumn, and that is my season, so I'm pretty much dying to read this. Next, I have A Crash of Fate by Zoraida Cordova, and this is the new Star Wars novel, and it's actually set in Galaxy's Edge on Batuu. I believe it's the Black Spire outpost, and it's a tie-in along with Galaxy's Edge, which is the new area of the theme park that's opening in both Disney World and Disneyland, and I am so excited to go there. I know it's gonna be like pure magic, but I'm really excited to read both this book and the adult book Black Spire by Delilah S. Dawson before my next trip to Disney, so that I will be able to pick up on all of the Easter eggs within the land. And I have to tell you, I'm just really hoping that Hondo is in this book because he's a space pirate. That is everything. If you've watched Clone Wars or Rebels, oh gosh, he's so good. And this one comes out in August. Then I have Cursed by Frank Miller and Tom Wheeler. And this is a new spin on the legend of King Arthur. And this is actually already in the works to be adapted for Netflix, which is really awesome. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this before I watch the Netflix adaptation. And I'm particularly excited to read this one because normally I never like read from the back of the book, but just listen to this like 2-sentence thing that I have to say. Okay, so whosoever wields the sword of power shall be the one true king. But what if the sword has chosen a queen? Yes. So the sword actually chooses the Lady of the Lake to be destined to be the queen. And yeah, I'm here for it. So this is actually a novel that's written by Thomas Wheeler, but it also has illustrations in it from Frank Miller, and Frank Miller is like super awesome in the comics world. If you're not familiar with him, he basically wrote the best Batman story of all time, The Dark Knight Returns, so if you have not yet read that, do yourself a favor and check that out. And you also get Carrie Kelly, who is one of the best Robins and never in continuity, but she's super great. But anyway, I digress. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I am very interested in the legend of King Arthur, but I'm not very familiar with it, so I think that this is going to be my first like dive into the Arthurian lore, and I'm really excited. And Cursed comes out in October. Then I have Scavenged the Stars by Tara Sim. This is a new book that I was told is like a Count of Monte Cristo inspired story, except it takes place in space. And Count of Monte Cristo is my favorite classic novel of all time, so I was definitely on board when I heard that comp title. So it's basically a gender swapped retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo, and we're following a girl named Amaya. She ends up rescuing this mysterious stranger from drowning, and that person ends up offering her like all of these riches, and she pretty much wants to use them to get revenge on the guy that destroyed her family. So she gets entangled in a game of deception, and she ends up crossing paths with the son of the person that she's planning on bringing down, and then she has to confront all of these truths about her past, and it sounds like it's going to be super great. And this one comes out in January. Then we've got The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. This is another one of those titles that hadn't been on my radar, but I am now very much looking forward to reading. It's a gothic psychological thriller that takes place at a boarding school on this island that's like on the very tip of Argentina, and there's something very weird going on there, and the staff is not allowed to like leave their rooms at night, and then someone important goes missing, and everybody who's at this school starts acting like they're possessed, and there are threats from others, and no one really knows what's going on. And the publicist who pitched this book to us told us that even though it's like looks like it's big, it ends up being such a quick read because it's so quick paced, and that as soon as she finished it, she had to read the entire thing over because the ending was just so shocking that she needed to reread it and see if she picked up on any of the clues. And it sounds like it's kind of genre bending, so I'm really, really looking forward to reading this one. I had no idea about it, and I'm so thankful that I now have it. Like, it sounds amazing. And this one comes out in September. Then I have Into the Crooked Place by Alexandra Christo, and this is her new novel. She's the author of To Kill a Kingdom, which admittedly was not one of my favorite books, but I am really interested in giving her second book a chance because it sounds like it's going to be really good. It sounds kind of Six of Crows-esque. There's kind of like a band of misfit thieves, and I think all of the characters are like kind of villainous, but you're sort of going to end up loving all of them anyway. And it's actually a duology, which I think will be a really good format. And basically it follows these four magical outsiders who have to band together in order to save their homeworld after one of them accidentally gives a vial of black magic that she did not know that she had to somebody, and it sparks like this huge conflict. And even though these people are kind of working to attain the same goal, it doesn't sound like any of them can trust anybody, including each other. And this one comes out in October. This is just a quick little one that I already have, but we also got a paperback copy of P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. This is obviously out already. The second book, P.S. I Still Love You, is going to be adapted for Netflix, and I believe it's already in post-production. And we got to hear Jenny Han talk to us a little bit about what the experience has been having her series adapted, which was amazing. And also I'm just like obsessed with Jenny Han. She's like the coolest person in the world, and she's always dressed like better than anyone else, and I just love her so much. She's like so cute and so positive and so happy. I can't even like put into words my love of Jenny Han and my love of this series. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the adaptation when it comes out and seeing the way that they changed the story, because they kind of touched upon the second book a bit within the first adaptation of To All the Boys I Loved Before. And I know that a lot of my friends are very much looking forward to seeing John Ambrose McLaren, but I will forever be a Peter Kay fan. So just throwing that out there. Then I have a super exciting thing, which is the least official looking thing ever, but I got it from Fierce Reads, and I almost died when I heard what it was. So here it says BookExpo exclusive. It's this like manila folder that looks like I'm holding like a case file, but upon opening it, we have this little like stapled together thing that looks like it would be a report, but it is actually the first 15 pages of The Midnight Lie by Marie Rutkowski. And Marie Rutkowski is the author of the Winners trilogy, and I recently found out that she was writing another young adult novel set within the world of the Winners, and I had no idea that that was happening. I knew that she was coming out with an adult novel, but I did not know that she was doing another young adult novel. I actually found out about it during BookExpo, and then getting this, I was like, what? So happy. So I'm really looking forward to reading this and to seeing how the world has progressed since all of the events of the Winners trilogy. I'm actually not quite sure when this one comes out, but obviously they're in the very early stages of things here, considering I have a printout, but I'm really excited. Then speaking of early stages, I also got a sampler of Curses and Kisses by Santaya Menon, and this is the first book. I believe it's going to be a duology. It's coming out in February of 2020. I believe this is Santaya Menon's fairy tale inspired series. It takes place at an elite boarding school, and it follows a princess, and she is looking for a fairy tale ending, and it is a star-crossed love story, and I'm quite excited because I really enjoy Santaya Menon's writing. And like I said, this one's coming out in February of 2020. Then I have Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Neon. This is the second book after Girls of Paper and Fire, and I'm really excited to read this one. This is coming out in November, and this series has such a strong cult following. My friend Alexa and my friend Madeline both really loved it. I have not yet read the first book, but I'm planning on reading it in June, and I have been told how much I will love it, so I am really looking forward to doing so. I don't want to read the synopsis of this one, obviously, because I don't want to spoil myself. I'm really looking forward to it, and Natasha is such a nice person. Thankfully, they had way more arcs of this than they said that they were going to, and it was almost like a never-ending pile, and nobody that we saw got turned away, so that was also really good. But yeah, very excited to read the first one and then have the second one to dive into. Then I have The Tea Dragon Festival by Katie O'Neill, and I'm really excited to read this. I loved The Tea Dragon Society. I think that the artwork in Katie's books are just outstanding, and I really loved Aquacorn Cove as well, and I'm really excited that she's going to be revisiting the Tea Dragon world, because Aquacorn Cove was definitely my favorite thing that she's written but I wanted so much more from the Tea Dragon Society, so I think that getting another story in that world will be a game changer. And this is about a dragon named Adion who was appointed to protect their village but ended up falling asleep. And it follows Rin's uncle Eric and his partner Ezekiel as they try to figure out what's going on with Aiden's enchanted sleep. And Rin's challenge is trying to help Aiden cope with all of the time that he's lost in these 80 years when he's been asleep within the forest. Also from Oni Press, I got Little Witches. I'm gonna be totally honest. I love books about witches. I picked this book up because it was called Little Witches, not knowing that is actually based on Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. That's amazing. So in this book, the Marches all know some witchcraft, but they have to keep their abilities a little bit of a secret within the town because there are a lot of people who see magic in a bad light. And then a witch finder moves in next door to them and the girls are kind of fearing for their lives because they have to be super secretive about what is going on. But it turns out that he's actually a really nice man, and then they end up befriending his grandson, Laurie. And then a very bad, dangerous storm comes to the town of Concord, and the girls have to see if they could try to overcome it and if they're powerful enough to do so. And this one comes out in August. Then I also got The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is a graphic novel. It's an original graphic novel that tells Alice's story. And I don't want to give spoilers for the Magician series, but I believe it takes place during a very specific point in Alice's story arc. And if you've watched the television show or read the original trilogy, I think you'll know what I'm referring to. Alice is one of the most interesting characters within The Magicians. I ended up loving her the best of anybody within the book series by Lev Grossman, so I'm really excited to read his graphic novel about that time. Though in the show, I have to say that Elliot and Margot are no contest my favorite characters. And this actually comes out in July. Oh my god, I just realized that I had this in another bag and I was like, I know I'm forgetting something that I was excited about. And that is Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. Alexa and I got to go to Mary's signing, so I actually got to meet her, which was really nice. I really enjoyed Emergency Contact, so I'm very much looking forward to her next book. Permanent Record follows a couple who has a long distance relationship. So we have a guy named Pablo who is an NYU dropout and he's working at a deli in Brooklyn. And then we have a girl named Liana who is a major influencer. She has millions of followers and she was a childhood actress turned now pop idol. They end up having a chance meeting at a bodega in the dead of winter, and the two of them end up turning to each other to try to kind of defy the expectations of others, and they really lean on each other, and I think it's gonna be really cute. I think that Mary H.K. Choi writes relationships really well. Like I said, I really loved Emergency Contact, so I've been really highly anticipating this one, and this one comes out in September. I also ended up getting a sampler of Havenfall by Sarah Holland. This is Sarah's new book that is being published by Bloomsbury, and I got the sampler because they actually dropped this along with Bridget Kemmerer's book, which I showed earlier. I really enjoyed Everlist by Sarah Holland. I still haven't read the conclusion, which is Evermore, but I'm quite excited for her next book too because, like I said, I really enjoyed Everlist. So this takes place at an inn called Havenfall, and there are lots of secrets there, and there's a girl who will pretty much do anything to protect them. The actual cover for this is so beautiful. I highly recommend looking it up on Goodreads if you haven't yet seen it. But this one's coming out in March, and I'm really looking forward to either getting my hands on a full arc or reading it once it does come out in March. I also got Aquaman Volume 1 by Kelly Sue DeConnick. I was really excited because Kelly was doing a signing on the first day of BookExpo, and I haven't read Aquaman comics in quite a while, but I love Kelly Sue DeConnick, and the fact that she is the one that's going to be taking on Aquaman, I'm really looking forward to seeing what she's planning on doing with his story. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I just think that she's such a great comic writer, and I feel like we're probably going to get some Mara in here, which I'm here for that. And this comes out in August. Then I went to a really wonderful DC event. I got to hear all about the different young adult and middle grade graphic novels that DC is coming out with within the DC Inc. line. They're all graphic novels and they're all really great starting points for people who want to be introduced to these characters. All of the authors were told not to get too invested in what has happened before in the characters because they really wanted this to be the jumping in point for people, and especially for younger readers. Honestly, they all made these books sound absolutely incredible, so I'm really excited to have pretty much all of them. So here I have Harley Quinn, which is by Mariko Tamaki, and she actually recently came out with another graphic novel, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which I really want to read. This is a Harley Quinn story, and she already said that her best friend in here is a political activist, so obviously Poison Ivy. I'm so excited. I will literally read any Harley and Ivy stories. I think they're just such a dynamic duo. And she said that this is really about Harley as a young girl, her transition from being Harley Quinzel into being Harley Quinn, and she has this positive influence, Ivy, and then she also meets the Joker, who is obviously a negative influence, and it's all about how, as being a young person, it's much easier to do the wrong thing, and it's much harder and much difficult to make the right choices, and it's all about Harley coming to terms with that and seeing the choices that she makes. And it's also full of drag queens, and I'm really excited to read this. And this one comes out in September. Then we've got Teen Titans Raven by Cami Garcia. The artist is Gabriel Piccolo, who I love all of his casual Teen Titans stuff. I have loved his Instagram forever, so I'm really excited that he is officially doing a DC book. But Raven is one of the best characters in the Teen Titans. She has such an interesting background, and I'm really excited to see Cami tell this story. And then also, literally today on my way home, I was on the train on the way home, and DC announced that they're going to be doing another book together. Cami and Gabriel are going to be doing a Beast Boy story. I'm excited. I really hope that they'll end up doing all of the Teen Titans. Oh, there's also a Dick Grayson one coming out, so you know I'm gonna be all over that. Just give me all the Nightwing. This one you don't have to wait too long for. It actually comes out in July. Then I've got a finished copy of Mara by Danielle Page. This one is already out, so you can already pick it up, but this is Mara's origin story. You might know Mara from Aquaman. Danielle Page was very adamant about constantly telling us that the Aquaman that is in this story is modeled after Jason Momoa from his Baywatch days. So if you look at it, you will definitely see that interpretation of Arthur Curry as opposed to the blonde one that we normally see in DC Comics, which I think is a really nice way of introducing a diverse take on the character. Mara, I think, is always really interesting too. She comes from a rival kingdom, and she has to kill Arthur in order to ensure that she will get the crown. They end up falling in love. So I'm curious to see how Danielle is going to tell their story. And it's all about Mara going to land, and that's where she meets him. Then we've got Under the Moon by Lauren Miracle and Isaac Goodhart, who honestly just seemed like the sweetest person ever. He was so enthusiastic and so happy, and you could tell how much it meant to him to be working on this book, and it was really it just kind of touched my heart. I just wanted to give him a hug. But apparently this one is recommended for young readers, but young readers who are on the older side of the spectrum, because it does get a little bit dark. If you're familiar with Selena Kyle Catwoman, you know how dark her storylines can be, and this one apparently does not shy away from that or shy away from showing it on page. So I think that there are a bunch of trigger warnings in here. I haven't read it yet, so I can't tell you what they are. I will tell you once I do read it and do a wrap up for it, but I'm really excited because I really love Selena Kyle. And this one actually also came out already, so you can pick it up at any store. Then we've got Black Canary by Meg Cabot, who is the author of The Princess Diaries, and she's writing a Black Canary story, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one too. It follows, obviously, Dinah Lance, and it's all about her finding out about her powers as Black Canary. Her power is her voice, and Meg was saying that when she was younger, she constantly got in trouble in school because she was the loudest girl, and she was constantly silenced, and that is obviously a big thing that happens just in society in general to women. Dinah's power is her voice. I think that this is going to be a really powerful story, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. This one comes out at the end of October. Then I've got Dear Justice League by Michael Northrup. This is one of the middle grade titles, and this one sounds like it's going to be really good. Something that I was not expecting is that Michael told us all about how he used to work at Sports Illustrated for kids, Sports Illustrated. I don't know what it's called because what are sports, but the one that's directed toward kids. And he said that as an adult reporter, athletes were often had kind of a hard exterior on, because anything that they say could be misconstrued by the media, so they give kind of contrived answers when questions were being asked. But in his experience, since he was working on the kids side, they would ask them questions that were sent in by 8-year-olds, and they would be much more receptive and open to giving an honest answer, and that was really interesting to him. So that's kind of how he ended up writing this story, because it's all about these kids talking to the Justice League. So the Justice League is obviously a little bit more open and more candid when it comes to talking to kids about what's going on. It sounds like it's going to be really good. And he also made a point about how when he was younger, he was dyslexic, and graphic novels really changed his life. And because you can tell the story from what's going on in the graphics, he wanted to make sure that like as much of the story was told through the graphics as possible. That way it would be a really great thing that could potentially get people who might have learning disabilities involved in graphic novels and get them interested in reading. And yeah, I just like hearing him talk was honestly heartwarming, and it got me really excited for this book. This one comes out in August. Then we've also got Superman of Smallville by Art and Franco. They are a dynamic duo. They have written quite a bit of other comics together. I really love their art style, and they also own a couple of comic book stores throughout the United States. There's one of them upstate in New York that I've always wanted to visit, so I'm gonna have to make a trip there soon. But we've got Crypto on the back here, which bodes well. We actually didn't hear too much about this one, but obviously it's gonna be an origin story for Superman, so yeah, and Crypto. I love Crypto. This one comes out in September. And then finally, I have Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu. They're adapting Marie Lu's book into a graphic novel form. Batman was actually my favorite of all of the DC Icons books, so I'm really excited to revisit that story and see it in comic form, since I loved the prose version so much. And yeah, like just looking at the cover, I'm like, we might read this tonight. This one comes out in October. Okay, so that is it. That is my book haul from BookExpo and BookCon 2019. I need water because I've been talking forever. But I hope that you guys enjoyed that. I hope that you found some new books to get excited about. I know I'm really looking forward to reading all of these, and even though it might not seem like it, I do feel like I was a lot more selective this year than I have been in years past. So I'm like genuinely really excited for every title that I picked up, and hopefully it came through when I was explaining them to you guys. Let me know what you think sounds like the most exciting, or what you're most looking forward to of everything that I mentioned. My Book Expo vlog will be up shortly, but that is all that I have for this video, so I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!